So let's get to the NMAT and have a quick 1 minute recap from yesterday's class that we covered in detail that the graph sum that NMAT had given, which supposedly can take a lot of time, even close to 5 minutes per question, which is around maybe 15 minutes for the whole graph if you do it in a very ordered fashion with very difficult calculations. And that's what we handled yesterday. So today, or additionally, maybe I can add is that we discussed the overall format of NMAT, right? I'm going to go over the format again because this is primarily why we're running the videos, to instill the exam specific knowledge, right? And then maybe deep dive more into quant and its topics today, and then maybe take one sum, and that's how we will roll on. So quickly, my introduction. I'm an alumnus of IIT Kanpur. My name is Karan Bagadia. I'm the founder of Test Monks. It's a test prep company where our motto is reasoning first based teaching. Okay. We want to base everything on learning the why and not just a shallow tip and trick, but make the tip and trick as well look obvious and natural so that it indeed comes to our mind when we are facing the relevant problem, right? I've been doing this for over 10 years. More of my details are there on my site, www.testmonks.com. You all can also visit me on LinkedIn. So let's get into this NMAT again, right? And I'm going to share my screen so that you all have an idea of what I want to say as along with me writing it. Okay, I'm just going to confirm again from the participants that can they see my screen, right? Can they see? So this is a mock I think I took just before the classes, the sessions yesterday. So I've opened it here, and this is what I want to recap again, right? Uh, which is the let me end to the review screen. Okay, the mirror is being thrown. I will try and log in again. Okay. So I want to open it up live in front of you so that you all can see it. So I'm going into the login page. And here's where we can access the mock, right? So as I want you to see now that there are three sections, okay? So I'm going to try and annotate, and I'm going to bring the floating bar here. Yeah. So there are three sections, okay? The quant section, the logical reasoning section, and the language skills or the verbal section. All of them have a scaled score rating between 12 and 120, such that your final score will be out of 360. Okay, final score out of 360. All the sections have equal weightage, right? So the number of questions may differ within each section, but each section gets equal weightage, equal importance. The test is adaptive, and even within and within a section is adaptive. So the sections are independent of each other, but within a section, your next question depends on your performance on all the previous questions. So if you've done really well, a hard question might come up. If you've done not so well, maybe an easier question will come up, allowing you to get back in rhythm. And therefore, your scaled score will not just depend on the number of correct or incorrect. It will also take into account the difficulty level. As always, being a product of GMAC, it's not a great idea maybe to leave questions unanswered either. So it will depend on what all metrics: the number of right, the number of wrong, the number of not attempted, if you've not attempted, and the difficulty level of the questions. Very important. So doesn't mean that if your test is not going well, or if you feel, oh, I'm getting every 1 out of 2 wrong, maybe, but maybe it's all the difficult ones that you're getting wrong. And then your score is still going to come out as a very good score. So I don't want you to have that cascading effect that I'm getting things wrong, it's not going well, and then, almost sort of not do the other sections to your potential. You never know. So, in this scaled score algorithm, be a robot, so to say, and don't judge your score. You don't know how the algorithm is working. It's a black box, no one knows. So, try and keep your correct accuracy high, but remember the difficulty is taken into account. And for me, from my experience, don't get stuck on a question. Getting a very difficult question right, let's say question number 18, and then not being able to tick the last 6 questions. I wouldn't go that way, because maybe you get great credit at the 18th question becoming correct, but almost 31 to 36, and the level of difficulty, understand, will keep falling as you get consecutive questions correct or incorrect. So your penalty is going to be higher. Are you getting what I'm saying? So 18th, you get, let's say, a 10 percentile bump. But 31, you get wrong. 32, you get wrong. 33, when you get wrong, you get an even bigger dip in the percentile, because this is supposedly going to be an easy question. Once you get it wrong, another even easier question is going to come wrong, which is going to cause an even more massive dip in the percentile. So better to get that 18th question wrong, because if it's not coming in 2 minutes, maybe it's not meant, maybe at this juncture for you, it's not meant to come, and better to skip it, so that at least what's in your potential, you have a fair crack at it, because that's where we're trying to get. So in, many times I find people stuck that I'll get it and sacrifice these last few questions, and I would say that's going to not have a great effect on your scaled score. You see, you're not going to have the time to do questions that were within your potential. And that 18th question, if it comes not correct, or had it come correct in the 6th minute, and if you left it in the 3rd minute, then great, right? Because you want to get all questions that are in your ability to crack under 3 minutes correct. That's your goal. So if it was not coming correct in 3 minutes, then it's better to get it wrong and take that bullet, bite that bullet. So little bit on the adaptive algorithm there, right? So quant 36 questions, LR 36 questions, language skills 36 questions. For language, you have 28 minutes. For logical reasoning, 40 minutes, and quant 52 minutes. So it looks like you have maximum time for quant, but as you know, that's going to eat up maximum amount of time per question as well. So it's important to keep pacing yourself, not getting stuck. But the flip side is also important. Don't get into almost a compulsive skipping streak, because you can't come back. You can't come back to the questions you have answered. So you have to, let's say, if you're going to get it in 1 more minute, push through and get it. So I have a threshold in mind. Okay, 3 minutes and I won't. And then after that, I'll skip it. But as the exam goes, that threshold may become 2 minutes. Some topic you don't like, or the question seems nasty, and if you're behind time, again, maybe better to skip it. But there has to be some reason. Don't randomly skip based on your feelings. It has to be fact based, that this topic I really do not perform well, or I do not know the formulae. Right? So it's a very tricky process, and that's why we're going to try and help you. So I'm going to now try and break down the quant section, especially according to the mock I faced. Especially why, if the score, let's say out here is 120, then I have gotten the most difficult questions is the algorithm has processed. And this is where you'll get, let's say, the expertise. And a very important point I want to suggest is, or want to impart is, even though 120 and getting a score of 120 means that I have gotten progressively more difficult questions, to be honest, it wasn't like that. I didn't get questions that kept increasing in difficulty. Sometimes the difficulty level did fall. Sometimes a medium question came up. So you need to be aware of this, that if you're getting an easy question, doesn't mean you've done not so well. Maybe it's an experimental question. You never know. So it doesn't mean if you get a couple of easy questions, oh, I have not been doing well and the algorithm is now throwing easy questions at me. Because I did get a couple of easy questions and look at the score. Similarly, the difficulty level won't keep increasing exponentially. It does have to cover all topics. So let's say it increased, it gave me a very difficult percentage question, but when it threw me maybe an average question, it wasn't very difficult because it does have to cover all the topics. So remember, there are many things going on in that algorithm, and your brain is to handle the question. Your focus should be to handle the question in front of you. And I'm repeating, couple of easy questions doesn't mean it's going very badly. They have to cover all topics. They have to still maintain some level of difficulty, and it cannot become exponentially strong. Okay. Now let's deep dive into what did I find on the quant. Okay. So let's go down here, and this is what should also govern your preparation, especially in those weeks when you're focused entirely on the NMAT, that week after CAT, and maybe this current week, before which or after which you will maybe slide into focusing on the CAT. So, what I want you to see are first the types of questions. So, for me, there are two types of questions: problem solving and data sufficiency. Okay. Problem solving, there are always five options and one option is correct. No multiple answer business, no type in the answer business. Why am I pointing out these things? Because I want you to see how it's different from CAT and the other exams. So no multiple answers, only one answer correct. No type in the answer, right? Unlike CAT or something. And since it's adaptive and you have to answer each question before you go ahead, negative marking of these concepts are not applicable, but doesn't mean you don't get penalty for getting a question wrong, because the adaptive algorithm does take that into account, right? So no type in the answer, the negative marking is not really applicable, but it does happen. And then no multiple answer either in the problem solving. Five options, one correct. The other is the data sufficiency type, right? Very, I would say the cat and all also can ask this, but they have varied formats and things like that. On the NMAT, and this is where you all can gain from this session, the data sufficiency will come, but as a very, very strict standardized format. Okay. It won't waver from it. And we'll discuss the DS format in detail. But these are the two types. Okay. And let's give you an idea. From here as well, only 5 DS came, right? The rest all were problem solving. And to be honest, when I did the deep dive, although they're showing 5 here, when I went into the questions individually and reviewed it, I actually found only 3 DS and 33 PS. Okay. According to them, 31 problem solving and 5 DS. But get an idea. It's maybe coming one in every 7 questions, for me even rarer, one in every 12 questions. And it is fair because the DS is indeed something which can take more time, which is tricky or trickier, and you'll come to know when we do the format thinking. So it's going to be less frequent than the PS. I got it 3 out of 36. They are saying 5. I think they won't waver too much, and you can at max expect 1 DS in every 6 questions. Now, is it trickier on an average, more time taking? Sometimes yes, especially the tricky part. But remember, because of the format where you just have to answer whether the data is sufficient or not, sometimes it's very less calculative and can be done in the blackboard of the mind. So don't just leave it thinking it is difficult or tricky, because it can be very helpful from the time perspective. Okay, so this is one thing I wanted to cover. Now, the other thing I wanted to cover, and pardon, I think my electricity is gone off, so I'm going to try and share my screen again. Give me just one a minute. I'm going to try and bring it here.
Your screen was visible.
Yeah, it should get visible again. Yeah, can you see my screen? Or let me share it again, but yeah. Again, quick thumbs up on the chat will be great if you all can see my NMAT screen again. If the participants can either give a quick thumbs up on the chat or on the or by speaking on the mic, then that'll be great. Yes, can you see my screen? Okay, so I have gotten the thumbs up, so great. So I'll continue from there, okay? So very good, very good. I was talking about now the DS and the PS, right? Almost I had 33, I'll repeat. 31 according to them, problem solving, and I'm saying 1 out of 6. And the last one I was saying is yes, it can be tricky, but it can be very helpful from the time perspective as well. And the DS format is one thing that we'll take up. Apart from that, we'll now get into two other things that the PS can be split many times into graphs and tables. But just before I go ahead, if you all can give me 1 second to come back, okay? I'll just get a glass of water. Yeah, great. So I hope everyone's joined back in. I'll wait for another 10 seconds. So this is where I'm going to now push ahead and talk about two things which are slightly unlike cat. So what is it? You can have data intensive questions, remember, or data interpretation questions. Okay, and they can come in two formats. One is you'll either get graphs and charts, I'll show you the example, or you'll get tables. Okay, so for me, again, let's discuss. I got two tables, each worth 4 questions, so another 8 questions there, and I got one graph and 4 questions on the graph. So there were 12 questions, and the graph is what we discussed yesterday, that iPod and the device things, right? The bar chart, and below that the pie chart, right? And there are 4 questions for us, and there were two tables. For me, usually, again, my advice, my tip, that the tables are slightly easier. The graphs can become slightly more logic oriented as well, but they're all doable still. And for me, all the 12 questions were all of the problem solving type, but nothing to stop the NMAT from making some of these 12 questions the data sufficiency type. So see what I'm saying? You have the problem solving type and you have the data sufficiency type. Maybe 1 out of every 6 at max will be data sufficiency. Additionally, the 36 within the 36 questions, I feel you should get three caselets, right? Not two, not four, very rare. Three should come. Two of table type, one of graph, or maybe two of graph, one of table type. And each with a set of 4 questions along with it. Because you don't know how many questions are going to come, you might be worried in the exam when you're trying to understand the table at question 1, but they're pretty standardized about it, and you should get 4 questions on it, right? So you know that the initial higher investment on understanding the table is okay. You can cover it up in the questions to come, where you won't have to go through the nitty gritties of the table again, and that will save time. right? Those questions, the 4 questions in that caselet, mostly problem solving type, but nothing to stop the NMAT from maybe framing it in a data sufficiency way, right? So those, so 5 or 6, I got, let's say, DS questions, and 12 can come through these graphs. And the rest of the 50% will be pure problem solving, right? So this is the type of question split that I wanted to transfer to you. So, in that focus of NMAT, the format of DS becomes important, how to crack the table format, but nothing much there. What I would advise is, what you can study is the familiarity with various types of graphs, like what is the bar chart, what is a pie chart, what is a stacked bar chart, maybe a scatter plot, the basic types. And the important things, that read the x-axis, understand the y-axis, understand one data point, which all we've covered yesterday, and you can watch that session if there's any doubt regarding that, right? And I'll also try and upload these sessions on my YouTube channel. So this is where you all can get access to it, or go through it even post this session if you want to revise something. Now, let's come to the more important split of the topics. So I'm going to use this table and my own analysis of what I really did face, because algebra for me is very different from probability. So I'm not a really happy student when I see these two clubbed. Like, what information do I get? Or arithmetic. And data sufficiency is a question type for me. So it's not an apples to apples comparison if you tell me there were 5 DS and 8 arithmetic. So I have done my own analysis, which is what I want to impart to you all, to tell you all how the questions were split. I don't expect it to vary too much, here and there maybe a little bit. So let's go on over there. Then I still remember, then after that we can cover the DS format, right? So let me bring my notes here. Okay, so first I'll take the larger split. Okay, and you'd be surprised, but I had, out of my 36 questions, 13 questions from percentages. And I would really include fractions and decimals as a part of this, because somewhere they get involved. But FDP, the very base, the very base of our arithmetic and mathematics, I had 13 out of 36 questions. All these arithmetic that they're saying 8, and many of these, possibly these graphs questions, the graph we did yesterday was all percentages. So they'll combine and make, they combined and made 13 questions for me, right? Which is quite high and tells us where we have to focus. Just your comfort here, and which is the suggestion yesterday, right? Movement between FDP, fractions, decimals, percentages has to be very strong. Then a very, very related topic for me was ratios, and I had 3 questions from it. And this for me sorts your arithmetic. See, I'm going to try and structure this syllabus for you in a nice way. So, arithmetic, I would study fractions, decimals, a lot of time on percentages, and then ratios, right? And that's giving me 16 questions out of 36. That's roughly close to 50%, which is a huge number for me, right? So let me go ahead from there and then come into, for me, logically, what comes in is algebra. After arithmetic, I'll study algebra. So you'd be surprised. On simultaneous equations, only one question. Inequality, only one question. And log, only one question. And this is what was my split yesterday for algebra. Only 3 questions from there. So, yes, always great to have deep dive knowledge of inequalities and everything, but really, this is what I found there. And now let's go to sort of these word problem topics. So, rate time work, I had 5 questions. Okay, another 5 from rate time work. I would like to include average as a concept here. Another 1 question here, 1 question on sequences. So that's 7 questions, let's say, from topics which I would classify as weighted average topics. Okay, so 7 questions here, which makes it how many now? 26 have gone by, right? Then number properties, which is a very miscellaneous kind of topic because difficult to break it down into further subtopics. But I had a nice 5 question set there. And some of the more, either they were very easy, or if you don't know how to crack them, then you might not be able to do anything about them, and then better to skip it, I would say. So time wise, these are great, right? But don't skip them too soon. And finally, I'll come to probability, permutations, combinations, which I clubbed together as counting methods, so to say. And I had 5 questions, which is quite a lot. Many people leave this topic that, oh, we'll not attempt questions on this. Anyways, time is less. So let's skip this topic because it's anyways a challenging topic. But you know what? Some of the most easiest questions can come from permutations and combinations and probability. So, yes, the more complicated question you may skip, but don't skip the topic altogether because the easy questions from that topic should still be handled by you, right? So, I'm not a great fan of skipping a topic. If something makes you unpleasant, deep dive, expose yourself to the unpleasantness, master the basics still. And some questions will then get cracked and will help you along the way. So let's look at the split, okay? Or let me break the syllabus for you. One big topic of arithmetic, okay? One big topic of algebra, one topic of word problems, as I would construe it, one topic of number properties. Really, permutation, combination, counting method can come in as a part of numbers, but I'm keeping it separate. So 5 major topics, right? I do feel in this set of mine 16 is just absurdly high, and I would say at least you should think of 12 questions coming from arithmetic. Okay, at least 12 questions coming from arithmetic, 4 from probability, 5 looks again a little high, and the rest may be split between this, right? Again, 3 questions looks too less, so I would say 6 and 6 on number properties. So how much does that leave us with? Maybe another 8 to 10 questions on word problems. So 10 to 12 on arithmetic. But remember, the emphasis is so high on this basic topic that it could go higher, like it went for me to 16. 8 to 10 on word problems, another 6 on algebra, another 6 to, I would say even 6 to 7 on algebra, and number property and PNC combined maybe 10ish, right? And these are the 5 topics. So I'm breaking down the quant for you. Now, so the major breakup is arithmetic, algebra, word problems, number properties, and PNC plus probability. Let's quickly look into what I want you to construe from arithmetic. As we've discussed, fractions, decimals, percentages. Percentages, I would study 2 more topics in detail. One is profit and loss, and one is interest. In fact, on profit and loss itself, I had 4 questions, and 2 out of my 3 DS were from profit and loss. So very, very, looks like a simple topic, but the questions can get quite tricky. And I had a question straight from interest, right? And quite a difficult question, very calculation intensive. So this is where again the NMAT is slightly different from CAT. The calculations can become quite intensive. The caselets also had a lot of calculations to be written down. Where is it different from the CAT? Not that the CAT can't ask difficult stuff, but it still gives you 3 minutes per question. And on NMAT, it's just 1.5. So it becomes kind of a time bomb. The difficulty has surely come down logic wise, reasoning wise, but the calculations become more important here. So again, very good if you could hone your calculation skills. So percentage, that's what I would do. And then ratios. So these are my 4 major topics: fractions, decimals, percentages, split into profit, loss, interest, and the 5th topic of ratios. In algebra, what would I study? Linear equations and simultaneous equations. Then get into inequalities. And again, log, people just leave it as a topic. But logs usually has one of the most simplest questions governing the basic rules of log. That's it. So it's sometimes very easy to crack it. So I'm not a big fan of leaving out log. One or two questions on NMAT, SNAP, CAT can come from log, and they're relatively easy to calculate if you have control over the basic 5 or 6 rules. So how would I study it? Linear equations in one variable, two variables, simultaneous equations, your inequalities, and your log. Additionally, I might study the absolute function, but it didn't come up yesterday. So even just the basic might be okay, and no need to do very ingrained um, studying of difficult absolute function concepts. And this is how I would do my studies: equality equations, inequalities, logs, and functions, focusing a little bit on absolute functions. Then word problems, which are the topic. Now, this is great. So I would focus on speed, time, distance, work, average, along with weighted average, although no weighted average mixture question came for me. And then sequences. Again, very surprising, but nothing came on sets for me yesterday. We'll keep doing these sessions as we are doing more and more mocks. So apart from the 3 topics I faced, I would still study weighted averages, and I would still study at least 2 sets. And 3 sets, very less likely to maybe face it, but can come. So at least the basics of 3 sets. Then probability and combinatorics and permutations and combinatorics are standalone topics. In number properties, what would I study? The quotient remainder form, divisibility. But in divisibility, again, let me point out, what do people do? Learn the rules of divisibility. And I had a very nasty divisibility question. You need to know why the divisibility rules are valid. Very important. You need to feel them. Those dry learnings, they might catch you short, if you just know it like a formula, just mucked up. So quotient remainder form, divisibility, factors, remainders, multiples, LCM, HCF, the usual stuff, right? So this is what I would do in the LCM HCF topic. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes. Also the units digit, and many times they've asked the last 2 digits as well. So you should have control over how to crack the last 2 digit problem. Last 3 digits, that I haven't seen. And then just some general number property aptitude type questions, like product of any two numbers is 0, then what can you say about the set or something like that. So I would break it up as general basics of numbers. You should know what are natural numbers, what's the difference between whole numbers, divisibility, quotient remainder form, leading into LCM, HCF, and then units digit and last 2 digits, and prime numbers maybe goes with all of this. It is in fact the DNA, and that's where I would stop. The theory of number properties, and every time I face a new type of sum which is requiring some different theoretical point in number properties, then capture that, because otherwise the syllabus is huge. And this is how I would look at the breakup of my topics. Where did these tabular questions come from? Now that may be a curious question to answer, so let's do that. My table, one table worth 4 questions, were all based on time, speed, distance. Very simple, straightforward, but calculation intensive. All 4 time, speed, distance. And the other table was 3 questions from percentages and 1 ratio question, right? And then the graph, that was the graphs and charts rather, right? And the third table was also all percentages. You see, the 2 tables, 7 questions from percentages, 1 from ratio. And the other table, again, very simple, 4 questions from time, speed, distance. Where did the DS questions lurk for me? So the 2 DS questions came from profit and loss within percentages, and the third DS for me came from number properties, a very standard topic related to the quotient remainder form, which we should do in one of these sessions. So this is a detailed split of how my quant section went, and you can see what all we've covered. The fact that sets wasn't there, weighted averages or mixtures wasn't there, but 2 topics I'd bring in as well. And should have a base control over these are my topics, because many times I find people, if you have a question, you don't know which topic it belongs to. That will happen less on the NMAT because the questions are not as dense and lengthy as the CAT again, So that's another difference between CAT and NMAT. They know you have 1.5 minutes. So the questions will be more short and sweeter than the CAT, but are they easy given the time has become half? The difficulty is still then on similar scales. More calculation, yes. Especially these caselets and tables and graphs and charts of NMAT, I have seen over the years can be quite time consuming. So whether to leave it or not, tricky, because they are easy, but you have to calculate a lot. So you have to see whether you're behind or ahead. Are you very strong in the other topics? Maybe leave it. But what I would still suggest is approach them in a structured manner. That is, see the question, feel whether what data you need, and then go about calculating it nicely. And don't go haywire or panic. Start randomly approximating and trying to somehow get the question right. Don't lose your bearings. If you decide to skip it, then fine, so be it. The next important thing, or the most important thing, is then the question in front of you. So at this moment, only two things left now for this session, and then I'm going to leave it. The data sufficiency uh, format, and then one quick question on number properties to conclude our discussion on number properties, which we started yesterday. I'm going to take one question today and then maybe move to a new topic tomorrow. Okay. So data sufficiency, best is to show you the format, right? So that's what I'm going to do. But let's scroll down. Yeah. Yeah. Let's go to review all. So here's your standard data sufficiency type. I'm going to give you all 30 seconds to go through it before I start speaking and loading you all with information. Till then, since the electricity is back, I'll just reconnect my devices. Maybe the screen shifted and I'll immediately correct that one. Yeah, I hope the screen's visible. Okay. So let me explain. And this is what helps me a lot on the DS. One sort of a tip, although I hate the word, that it's always going to be these five options. One sufficient, two not sufficient. And remember, the idea is not to get to the answer. Only sufficiency is enough. So you don't need to calculate the final answer. And therefore, be very clear on what the question is. And look at it here. Did he make a profit or a loss? I don't need to calculate the profit. I don't need to calculate the loss if that were the case. I just need to be able to determine was there a profit or was there a loss? Yes and no to that. Versus if the question was, how much is his profit? Then if the statement has to be sufficient, I need to be able to uniquely determine the profit. See the two types of questions, therefore. A DS, very good framework is identify the type. Is it a yes no question like this one? Profit or loss? Yes or no? Then that's your job. And if the answer is yes, then that's that. Second type is a value based question. Then I need the exact unique value. Even if two values are possible, then it's not sufficient. So two types, yes no type or the value based question. And things can become easy. Like, if it's a value based question and you can't calculate the value, you can only maybe say it's positive or negative, then that's not enough, right? So you get, is the question asking me for yes no type or the exact value? And I like this table and see whether you all like it and it's good to use, because this is what I would do every time. Read statement one and determine whether it's sufficient. Because if it is, then it's either A or D. Check. If it is, then it's either A or D, and these are gone. And if it isn't sufficient, then A or D, A and D both rather are gone. Check. Then, very important, forget the information in A, which is the most frequent error on data sufficiency. That when you're reading B, we sort of already we are assuming the information in A. Don't do that. It's not valid. We have to do statement 2 alone. Now, if it is enough, let's say A wasn't enough, and if B is enough, then that's the answer. Otherwise, it's not. And then I would do both statements. But if one of them was individually enough, the flowchart has ended. Now both statements, if enough, then C, otherwise E. So what's the thing? Is A enough or not? If it is, then either it's AD. If it isn't, then BC. So you're anyway split into two. And it helps me a lot. So let's say it's A is sufficient. Then this is gone. Then you just have to check, is B alone sufficient, having forgotten the information in A or having disregarded it. If it isn't, then I'm down to here. That is B alone enough? If it is, then game over. If not, then both together. Remember, that's the classic C trap, is you assume the information in two. Many times, 1 and 2 both are definitely sufficient, but 1 itself was sufficient maybe. And we miss that. So don't assume information in 2 or in 1 when evaluating 2. A higher form for me would be, don't go for A first. You could go for B first, dependent on which statement looks easy to help you bring momentum. And if you've written B, if you're evaluating B first, then this is what I would do, right? So, it brings momentum, because if you can reject B, or rather, let's say, accept B because it was easier to process, then you just have one simple task left. Is A enough or not? And sort of you have momentum and you want to do it. Versus if you attack the tougher statement, you're like, this is tough and God knows what's there in the next statement. And then, how much time is this going to eat up? And, all those thoughts can just start, right? So this was my view on data sufficiency, which is a little non-Indian MBA, comes from the GMAT legacy. The CAT tends to ask, what I don't like about the CAT is they keep changing the format, are there four statements, are there five and stuff, and little less often asked. Can come as anyways, great format for the aptitude test. As you can see, can get tricky because you're not solving one. You may end up solving three questions, because is one enough? Is two enough? Are they both enough? And therefore can be time consuming, but less calculations. So it has its pros and cons, and we've seen the relative frequency of this question as well. In the interest of time, I'm not going to cover the number properties questions, but I would really like to show it to you. And that's the first thing we can take up tomorrow before we get into the next section or the next topic. So let me bring it up. And you see, it's come to me quite at the end. It's come to me after getting 30 questions right. So it's possibly on the more difficult side, right? And this is a great thing for me to point out. Now, this question is very simple, right? But it's come to me after getting 29 questions right. So it does take us away from the fact, right? From the adaptive algorithm, and that every question has to be very difficult. If I see this question and I start thinking, oh, some of my questions have gone wrong, I may be not thinking correctly. And that's what I'm wanting to advise you against. And this is the point I'm going to repeat in the future sessions for you. Okay. But this is the tougher question. And this is what I want you to take a note. And then that's where we leave you at. Of course, as always, once we've read this question, these are my ending remarks, that please do give us any feedback on the WhatsApp group as to how the session went. Any of your very tricky doubts on NMAT can be posted on the group. If you loved the session, then please tell your friends about it so that they can join in, because that's what we want, to have more and more impact. The sessions are absolutely free. And handle the other aspects. Like today, I think was great on understanding the NMAT section, and the differences could have become apparent if you are comparing it with what knowledge you have on CAT, that the time is less, so the questions are shorter, but they are more heavy on the calculation still, even though the time is less, which is why NMAT is known as the time bomb, right? Time is less, but the calculations go more intense. But the questions and the logic and the depth may not be tier 3 layers of depth. Maybe 1 layer or maybe 2 layers of depth may come in compared to the cat. Anything you've missed, can watch this session again, possibly on YouTube, on my channel. And yeah, that's great. Hope this session has helped. I'll close this session now. Yeah, see you again tomorrow.